When Giselle woke up again, she was alone in the hospital room. Her phone was dead, and she didn't know how long she had been sleeping. She looked out the window and saw that the sky was still dark. She got up and put on her shoes, then walked out. As she passed by Madeline's room, she saw the slightly open door and her footsteps stopped involuntarily. Madeline was in there, with Jensen, who was supposed to be Giselle's husband. Madeline had a face that reminded you of first love. Even in the hospital gown, she couldn't hide her clean and elegant demeanor. Her almond-shaped eyes were bright and shining against her fair skin. Giselle thought that perhaps Jensen was drawn to Madeline's innocent and pure spirit, while Giselle herself was a wicked person who had broken up a loving couple. Jensen's kindness to Madeline made Giselle jealous. And after watching them for a while, her gums began to ache from clenching her teeth too hard. People who didn't know Jensen might think that he was always cold and distant, but Giselle knew that he actually poured all his tenderness into Madeline and wouldn't give a single drop to anyone else. Of course, he had been kind to Giselle once upon a time, but that was a long time ago and all of it was gone now. Giselle's spying eventually caught the attention of the two inside the room. Madeline looked at her and trembled like a small white rabbit, hiding behind Jensen. She looked frightened and her eyes were red, as if Giselle had seen a despicable villain. Jensen caressed Madeline's shoulder gently and his eyes turned cold as he looked at Giselle, feeling annoyed. That annoyance turned into disgust and was clearly written on his face as he scolded her. "What are you doing hiding there? Pretending to be mysterious?" Giselle stood at the door and looked at the two people inside, who were cuddling with each other. It hurt her eyes to see them, and she didn't want to watch, but she couldn't help it. That was the Jensen Lindstrom she had never seen before, the one she had yearned for. But after seeing too much, her eyes blurred and her heart turned to ashes. Jensen blocked Madeline behind him and glared at Giselle, feeling a complex mix of emotions when he saw her pale, bloodless face. "Since you're awake, go back," he said, his brows furrowed. Giselle hesitated for a moment and asked in a hoarse voice, "Are you coming back tonight?" Seeing the wary look in Jensen's eyes, Giselle didn't dare to say anything else. She couldn't understand what wicked deeds she had done in the past few years to make Jensen guard against her like a thief. But her heart was not made of steel. Although she had prevented him from being with Madeline, for these 4 years of their marriage, Giselle had served him like a nanny, taking care of his daily life and meals. Although they couldn't achieve a harmonious family and a happy marriage, she never asked him about his affairs with Madeline all these years. In the past, Jensen was wary and even secretive. Especially after the Sherwood family declined and faded out of the list of the wealthy. Giselle was no longer a threat to Jensen. Although she never mentioned his affair with Madeline, how could she not care? Being with Jensen, Giselle had lost everything. Now she even got stomach cancer and was dying, but she still had to help others prolong their lives. Her own life was almost gone, but who could think of helping her to extend it? As she turned around, Giselle heard Madeline's voice coming from inside. "Is it okay for her to lose so much blood? Her complexion looks so bad." "It's okay. She has always been in good health." See, this was the man she loved. Even her rival could see that her complexion was not good, but he couldn't. Jensen was not a careless person. He could know immediately when Madeline was in trouble. However, he had no patience or attentiveness towards Giselle, whom he had known for 6 years. Giselle took a deep breath and left without looking back. The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier. She walked back slowly with her head down. She didn't have an umbrella in her bag, and soon she was soaked. Giselle shivered in the cold, her head and eyes throbbing. Her stomach ached with the cold, and as she reached to soothe it, she accidentally knocked off the ring from her nameless finger. Her gaze drifted to the ring, which had lost its luster after 4 years and now showed signs of tarnish. She remembered when she and Jensen signed their engagement contract, and she had casually remarked, Since we're getting married, there should be a ring involved, right? Not bothering to pick a decent wedding, Jensen later bought her a cheap ring at a random accessory store. He gave it to her with a biting comment, "Here, take this. You're not worth more than this." Giselle had simply smiled at the time, her eyes conveying a deep sense of desolation. The ring was a size too small, and she had forced it onto her finger, which bled and turned red. She had persisted in wearing it, believing that it would eventually fit comfortably. But she never thought that it would loosen and fall off her finger. Just like her relationship with Jensen. Giselle curled up in the rain, her stomach churning violently. She quickly covered her mouth and dry heaved twice, her eyes burning red, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. The rain continued to pour, and pedestrians on the street began to open their umbrellas. She picked up the ring from the ground and pressed it against her chest, waiting for her stomach to calm down before standing up. She seemed like a lost soul in the rain. In a daze, she bumped into someone. The collision brought her back to reality, and she apologized nervously, looking at a young mother with her child. The woman held her child's hand and said gently, "It's okay." The child raised his head and looked at Giselle's red eyes, whispering, "Are you crying?" The woman patted the child's head, apologizing with a glance at Giselle, and walked away with her child. Giselle heard the child ask his mother, "Mommy, why is that lady crying? Is she scared?" "No, the lady is a grown-up." "A grown-up won't get scared," the mother replied. The sound of the rain drowned out their voices, and Giselle gently covered her stomach, looking up to hold back her tears. Scared? How could she not be scared? She was scared when she went to the hospital alone. Scared when she underwent a gastroscopy, scared when the doctor called her to the diagnosis room alone, and even more scared when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. But what she was truly scared of was dying alone, with no one by her side.